Turn the mic on. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's IOP Speaker Series event, Tariffs, Trade, and Tech, Oh My, co-sponsored by the Harris School of Public Policy. My name is Kate Davis, and I'm a fourth year here at the college from New York City, studying public policy with a specialization in artificial intelligence. I serve on the Institute of Politics Student Advisory Board. I just recently finished my term as co-president of the U Chicago Democrats, and currently I also serve as a Bridge Civic Ed co-chair. As a student who centered much of my academic and professional work around commerce, tech advocacy, and emerging technologies, I'm beyond excited, along with so many of my peers here today, for today's conversation about how innovation, trade, and global competition are reshaping the world for students like me. I can't think of a more timely time for this conversation. No matter where you fall on the political spectrum, I imagine that most of us would agree that the long-standing norms surrounding trade, commerce, and America's role in the global economy aren't just shifting, they're being actively rewritten. From tariffs and export controls to major investments in emerging technologies, the current administration is, in many ways, fundamentally redrawing the US economic map. And that's why we're especially excited today to be joined by someone who has been right at the center of these critical debates, Secretary Gina Raimondo. Secretary Raimondo most recently served as the 40th United States Secretary of Commerce, where she led major initiatives to strengthen American manufacturing, promote innovation, and set the ground rules for emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and semiconductors. Before joining the Biden administration, she served as the 75th governor of Rhode Island and the state's first female governor, where she focused on economic revitalization, job creation, and expanding access to education and workforce training. Her leadership has placed her at the forefront of some of the biggest policy debates shaping America's economic future, from tech regulation to trade tensions with China. Moderating today's conversation is someone we all know well, David Axelrod, the founding director of the IOP and the former senior advisor to President Barack Obama. Before we get started, just a few quick reminders. Please make sure all your cell phones are silenced. Remember, when it's time for Q&A, we always give priority to student questions first. A microphone will be placed in the audience. And finally, make sure to check out some exciting upcoming IOP events we have going on. Tonight, you can join us at Ida Noise at 5:30 for a conversation with podcasters, Know Your Enemy and Crooked Media's Reed Cherlin on covering politics in the Trump era, new conservatism, new media, and more. And on May 12th, we are also thrilled to announce an IOP event featuring Twitch streamer Hassan Piker in conversation with Astrid Herdon from 5:30 to 6:45 p.m. at the David Rubenstein Forum. You can register for both events on the IOP website. With that, please join me in welcoming warmly to the stage Secretary Gina Raimondo and David Axelrod.
Hi.
Madam Secretary.
Yes.
Good to be with you.
Good to be with you.
I did not realize when we set the date that it would be such a large date in history, 100 days into this administration. And I don't want to we could spend an hour just talking about that.
Yeah, no, then I'm leaving.
But I can, and we're going to take some questions, so you may get some more questions than I ask about that.
Nice.
But it does occur to me, I just was on a vacation with my family, and we were at a resort, and my 2-year-old grandson, there was a woman who came and assiduously rolled towels and put them on all of the chaises there. And my 2-year-old, as soon as she walked away, my 2-year-old grandchild would come and he would unroll every one of the towels. And I'm wondering if that's how you feel.
Yeah.
Because
If only it were as easy as going back and re-rolling the towels.
Which she did, and it just went on and on. And anyway, but when I think about your portfolio, which was pretty expansive, it was, trade issues and global alliances and targeted tariffs and science and technology and meteorology and climate and so on. It's like, how do you feel?
You know, how do I feel? So I feel happy to be here. My first time, maybe even on campus. Definitely my first time here, not on campus, because I've seen you before. I've seen you before. It's been on campus, my first time here. So it's great to be here, and I always love being with David. You know, how do I feel? I feel so proud of the work we did, much of which is, I do want to let you know, much of the work we did, including Chips and Science, is happening. It's like continuing. The bluster is it's not, but I am in touch with the people there, and it is still happening. The money is going out the door, not as well or as fast as I would like. So I feel great about that. One of the things I did when I first arrived, I used some of the rescue plan money to create a job training initiative at the Commerce Department. Never before had Commerce done job training. And I just got a note from one of the career officials said we just passed the 50,000 person mark, which means we found 50,000 people who are unemployed or underemployed, provided them job training, and they now have jobs. So, it's like real stuff. Thank you. It's real stuff. In fact, I was just talking to somebody on the way over here, a person who drove me to the airport in DC, and he was telling me, he didn't know who I was, he's like, hey, did you see that TSMC, for the first time ever, just produced a 2 nanometer chip in the United States in Arizona? And I was thinking, we did that. So all good stuff. Unbelievable people who work for me, who killed themselves, and a lot of it is there. That being said, it's like a lot of it is horrible, when I think back to how careful we tried to be not overusing the president's authorities, how careful we tried to be with no corruption, ethics. When I took office, my general counsel wouldn't even allow my husband and I to own a mutual fund of gold on the hypothetical, theoretical theory that something I did would affect the gold market.
Yeah, that's too bad. It would have been worth a lot.
I know. But my point is, we tried so hard to do the right thing for the right reasons, and now my predecessor comes in, and it's pretty rough.
No, your successor.
My successor came in. My predecessor wasn't so fabulous either, Wilbur Ross, but that's another story. And it's brutal. Morale is very low. They're defunding a lot of the science. The work that I did around AI and AI safety is all being unwound. A lot of the work we did, the most depressing thing to me about my old job is that as part of the infrastructure bill, we managed to have $50 billion sent to the Commerce Department to make sure every American had the internet. A third of people who live in rural America and half of people who live in tribal lands do not have access to high-speed, affordable internet in the United States of America today.
That thing was passed in 22. Why wasn't any of that done?
It was done. That's a lie. See, you are falling prey to fake news.
False, yeah.
Fake news. It was done. A lot of it was done, and it is happening. You know what wasn't done that has been done since I left? They paused the program to allocate $7 billion to Elon Musk and Starlink.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't let happen, despite him calling me, and I think that's what's happening now. So, I feel good about a lot of what we've done, but like you said, they're undoing the towels.
And what about you, as I say, you were involved in thinking through these targeted tariffs and so on. So talk about the proper use of tariffs and the reckless use of tariffs.
So, look, there's a place for tariffs. And David knows my personal story. My family's life was massively uprooted because China doesn't play by the rules, subsidizes, undercuts, dumps global steel, dumps their subsidized steel and aluminum on the global market, tanks the price, and it's hurt a lot of American workers, including my father, my uncles, all of our friends when I was a kid growing up in Rhode Island in the 80s. It is true, when I was born, like in the early 70s, a third of America's GDP was manufacturing. It's like 10% now, 12%. And that is in large part due to the fact that we allowed ourselves to be taken advantage of by other countries. It isn't just cheap labor. Don't let anyone tell you it's just cheap labor. It's free capital. And so what's my point? My point is free trade is fine if every country plays by the rules. But when countries don't play by the rules, and the biggest offender is China, and they subsidize workers, subsidize capital, subsidize manufacturing, American workers get hurt. And so what do you do about it? You do, when President Trump, and I don't like anything about him, but when he campaigned, he said targeted tariffs, reciprocal tariffs, and he was talking about, 10% to 60%. Now he's come in and just thrown a bomb. But
targeted meant on this planet.
Yeah, on this planet,
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes.
So, targeted tariffs, when you drive in Europe, you don't see a lot of American cars. They're massively tariffed. So, you drive in China, you don't see a lot of American cars. BYD makes a gorgeous car. The entire supply chain for BYD was subsidized by the Chinese government. Not fair. So the concept of sticking up for the American worker and sticking up for American manufacturing is a good one. But doing it in a way that is like thoughtful, targeted, makes sense, legal, within the president's authority, that's the way to do it.
And what do you think the ramifications of the way he's done it are now?
I think listen, I try to be positive, but if he continues to go this way, I think the ramifications are big-time recession, certainly in the US, if not globally. And even more than that, people won't trust America. So when we were in office...
Seems like a long time ago.
Yeah, can you believe it? It's crazy. People say to me, well, what are you doing next? I'm like, it's only been a few months, but it feels like forever ago. Anyway, when we were in office, people would say, do you want to decouple from China? And I would always say, no, that's ridiculous. We want to trade with China, et cetera. But we would always say we want to de-risk. Now people are saying, let's de-risk from the United States. We don't want to put too much investment in the United States. We don't want to rely on the United States too much for our national defense. Like, we've become unreliable, untrustworthy. And so the ramifications of that, I think, are quite long-standing. And my view is the world is safer when America is strong and leads. If America leaves a vacuum on the world stage because we're not trusted, who's going to fill that vacuum? Probably not countries that share a belief in freedom, protecting human rights, and openness and respect for the law. So, the greatest ramification is that. If the United States withers and becomes a non-trusted partner, it's really tough. It's global instability more than just economics for a long time. Now, if we can get rid of this guy as fast as possible and fix the politics that brought him to us, it's reparable. That's the good news. I think we can fix it.
Yeah. I want to talk about how we got here.
Yeah.
And in some ways it goes back to your dad and your uncles and so on. Though I will say parenthetically, at least somebody's finally taken on the Canadians. So
Okay, but yeah, very funny, haha, I agree. Okay, Home Depot sales, just for one company, I'm sure it's true for other companies, are down 25 to 30% in Canada. How is that good for any American? Or anyone?
Well, and you saw, and you may know Mark Carney.
I do.
Yeah.
I think he's great. I'm so excited he won.
Yeah, but he's been very clear that they're making other arrangements. And so look what, the challenge is you can't go back. It's hard to put the genie back in the bottle. You say if you can get rid of this guy, but the fact is, he was here once, and Americans said, well, maybe it was the world says maybe it was an aberration.
Yeah.
But let's also talk about how we got here, because I think there's a lot of, especially among Democrats, there's a lot of fulmination, outrage, fury about what he's doing, but not a lot of self-reflection on how we got to this point.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And that seems necessary to me, because at the end of the day, this is kind of a teardown. Some things probably needed to be. Other things are very necessary, and it's a tragedy that they have been. But whether you like it or not, it's going to be a teardown. So the question is, how do we get here? Why do people lose such faith in the institutions? In the Democratic Party presented itself as the party of working people. Working people came to see the Democratic Party as a party of elites and institutions at a time when they were very angry at elites and institutions. How did all of that happen? And was there a legitimate sense of betrayal in some ways on the part of people like your dad, who had a good, solid middle-class life that was sort of sought out from
Literally taken away.
Yeah.
Quickly.
So what? How do we get to this point?
Yeah. So the reason I ran for governor, I had been state treasurer. I was in business. I didn't think I would do politics. And we were at dinner, my husband and I, with my parents. And my dad, he never did get over, he had a great life, 27 years at the same factory, got in the carpool in the morning, like all of his buddies. There was a place for everyone at the factory, or it seemed to me as a kid. His best friend was a security guard. He was in manufacturing. Somebody was a chemist. It was secure, and then it wasn't. And that was horrible. And it was the whole state. And I remember, and then it was just nothing much. Rhode Island, when I became governor, we had the highest unemployment rate in the country. And that was 2014, to give you a feel for that. People called it the Rust Belt of New England, and it was true. Anyway, we were at dinner one night. I said, Dad, what happened? Why is it that Massachusetts, our next door neighbor, was thriving and we were still in the dumps? And in his simple, plain-spoken way, he said, Gina, because our leaders let us down. They just watched it collapse and didn't do a damn thing to help us out. That's how he saw it. And in his words, he said, Massachusetts got into computers, and our leader didn't. They knew what was happening. They saw the writing on the wall, and nothing. And I think there's a lot in what he said. Now, Rhode Island, lots of places, the democratic solution to free trade is some kind of trade adjustment assistance. Democrats love, a government program solves the problem. It mostly hasn't worked.
It mostly didn't happen.
It either didn't happen, and if it did happen, it didn't work. It didn't really put guys like my dad back to work. So, my dad has passed. I don't think he could ever pull a lever for a Republican. But I do know his view, and the view of very many people is, to me, he would say his own daughter, you're all the same. You bunch of politicians, you're all the same. What are you fixing? What are you doing? You're all the same. So that feeling of, what are you doing for me? My life has been severely disrupted. I've had a lot of Democratic presidents. What have you done for me? Let's try some change. I think, yeah, it's real. And I have always believed, and I don't want to upset any of my colleagues, you know this, when I was governor, so often I felt Democrats would try to convince people it was better than it was. And I just think that's a huge mistake, and I never did it. Like, I know, it's tough. It's really tough. And I'm sorry that we didn't deliver for you. But this is what we're going to do now. And I also think Democrats are I'm a free bird now, so I can say whatever I want. We are process obsessed instead of being outcome obsessed. Now, truth be told, I was never beloved by a lot of Democratic coalitions because I'm more outcome obsessed than process obsessed. So if you want to, as I've done, like revitalize manufacturing when I was governor and secretary, have offshore wind farms, build infrastructure, you have enough process to hear from everyone, and then you say, this is what we're going to do. I kept schools open in COVID, the only Democratic governor to do that. Thank you for saying that. It was tough. Didn't make a lot of friends with teachers' unions, didn't make a lot of friends with a lot of constituencies. When you try to build manufacturing and you say enough process, we're going to do it, you don't make a lot of friends with open government people or maybe climate folks. And by the way, I believe in all of that. But at the end of the day, what are you about? The process that placates a laundry list of coalitions or results? The other thing is Democrats have even if we get our act together and say, my own view is this, we're not going to have another Democratic president until we have a candidate that leads with economics. I would also say, and you may throw me off the stage, we haven't really had a president who leads with economics since Bill Clinton. We have 52 minutes left. You can't throw me off the stage.
I'm not going to throw you off the
stage. But I think you got to lead with that. The economic insecurity. What is our plan? I cannot tell you the Democratic platform. Everything is a laundry list to placate a laundry list of coalitions in a primary. So I think we need a candidate who really leads with the economic insecurity and the solution for it. A candidate who doesn't talk down to people and try to convince them that they should be feeling better. It's not as bad as they think. Look at all we've done, right? Look at all we've done. And I've been guilty of this myself.
Wasn't that, I mean, look, I know you were a loyal, faithful cabinet member, but isn't that exactly what President Biden did?
I would just, again, I had lunch with the boss last week, so I'm going to stay loyal to him. I will say many politicians, including me, have said, God, look at all I've done. Look at all these programs. I have a great advantage. Rhode Island is the most cynical electorate in the country.
That's a tremendous, how did you get that?
I have data to back that up. So when I took office, like I said, highest unemployment rate in the country, I worked like crazy. And very like Biden, I rolled out 1,000 things. Free college tuition, an infrastructure plan, a clean energy plan, and I hit like a wall of cynicism. And I was like, but don't you see all my great plans? Don't you see all these statistics? And yes, we did too much of that in the Biden era. It does not work. If you go home at night and you can barely pay your bills and you don't know your schedule for the next week and your health care is unaffordable and child care is too expensive and your rent is 30% up and your grocery bill is 30% more and your bill at Walmart is 40% more than it was 3 years ago, it sucks. So we got to get our head around that. And then we also have a big, let's say we get it together, an economic message, a good messenger, authenticity, a willingness to stick up to some of the coalitions in our own party. That is key. Outcome over a process. We have like a distribution of content problem. If the Republicans own Fox, X, all the major podcasts, TikTok, we're kind of screwed. Me, my party. So I think that's we really have to give some thought to how are we going to compete on the pure reaching people.
Yes. Well, those are two separate issues.
Two separate issues.
One is how you deliver content, and the other is what the content is.
It's two, but we have,
By the way,
I
you
think,
didn't when
both
you were
problems.
when you didn't try and brand your stuff as Raimondonomics, did you?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
That would have been dumb. I didn't do that.
It feels like, I mean, the things you're describing seem more like less about sort of individual aspects of neglect or something, but big structural things in the economy. And you were successful in venture capital. That's what you did before you became the state treasurer. And you and I know a lot of people who've done very, very well. And the country itself has grown and the economy has grown, but somewhere along the line, and it's, there was a detachment and folks like your dad and others started not sharing in that success. Maybe it had to do with when companies went public. I think that was an aspect of it, and shareholder concerns became great. But
Everything.
yes, so you talk about the 1,000 ideas. Give me a few that would sort of profoundly change that trajectory that has seen us grow as polarized economically as we've been in a century.
Yeah. So the thing you just said is very true, and we all know this, but I don't think our democracy can survive a capitalism that's playing out as it is today. I really don't. It's good to be rich. It's American to want to get rich. It's good to have a business that wants to be successful. And Democrats have made a huge mistake in not acknowledging that. But at the end of the day, some simple things have to happen, like raise taxes on the ultra wealthy and make investments in schools, infrastructure, training, et cetera. It's just
I'm assuming the
has
rest
to
of you who
happen.
didn't applaud are among the ultra wealthy. So.
Exactly. But it's just, I could go on all day and I won't. We've come to a place where people who have so much money are utterly detached from the rest of us. It's not just because they're richer. They don't fly commercial. They don't send their kids to public school. They don't go to the public park. This is bad for democracy and civic engagement. It's an utterly different American experience. Two different Americas. Didn't you invent that?
Yeah, well, I may have had, anyway.
But, so like one thing is, it used to be, okay, fine, the CEO of my dad's company made a lot more money than my dad. But probably took the subway once in a while, didn't have 7 homes all over the world. So some redistribution, and it is as simple as more taxes and redistribution must happen if we're going to survive. I just really believe it. Point 1. Point 2, you have a lot of ultra-rich here.
Yes.
Point 2, education. Now, I'm definitely not going to get invited back when I say this, but higher ed, not Chicago, but in general, guys, it's not working. 40%, here's the deal. Almost every job in America created since the great financial crisis, good job, requires a degree past high school. 40% of people who go to college do not graduate. Why? It's too expensive. Do you know what they do? They drop out, they have a lot of debt, they become, fill in the blank, waitress, home care worker, bartender, and you meet them, and they say, I'm gonna go back, I'm going back. How are you gonna go back? Your debt escalates. So we need a fundamental change in the way we train people post-high school so that it is affordable, it is applied, and it leads to a job, a good one that pays. That's very disruptive. You know, some of the very institutions that we Democrats stick up for need to also be disruptive. By the way, a few years ago, I was going to write a book. I started to craft it out. The title of my book was going to be Burn It All Down. I can't do that now. It's happening. But higher ed needs to be disruptive.
I'm sure your staff was excited about that.
They were. No, you know what they told me? You know what they told me, all joking aside? You need to be more positive. Hope is what sells. Positivity is what sells. Anyway, higher ed needs to be massively changed. The primary system needs to be massively changed. Wealth inequality needs to be massively changed. You talked about broadband and housing and factories and process-obsessed Democrats. The permitting system is so broken, it would make you cry. Needs to be fixed. Do you know why it's not fixed? In our case, Democrats, because we're afraid to upset people. I'm going to give you an exact example. This is a concrete example to something that I did do and would do. Chips factories are gigantic, like 3, 4, 5 football fields. And they have environmental concerns. You got to be very careful, right? They use chemicals, dyes, et cetera. There's air, land, water, local regulations, federal regulations, state regulations, upon. To permit a new facility would take anywhere between 5 and 8 years. So one of the regulations is called NEPA. It's a National Environmental Law that applies to big construction projects where the government gives a subsidy. If we had applied that to the chips factories, it would have added another several years. So I went to OMB and said, it shouldn't apply to these factories for these reasons. And I lost the battle. The administration didn't support me. And I lost the battle, maybe on substance, but I don't think so. I think there was a hesitation to upset the groups. Don't upset the environmental groups. Don't upset, our constituencies in a primary. So I worked in a bipartisan way. Now this, you're not going to like this. I worked with
Let them decide for themselves.
I worked with Ted Cruz, who I don't like, but I worked with him, and Mark Kelly, Republican, Democrat. They passed a law, with my help, to exempt CHIPS facilities from NEPA. Today, they're producing 2-nanometer chips in Arizona. So you have to ask yourself, so what would I do? I would do more things like that. But that requires tough discussions with people in your own party. And those are discussions that we need to get to.
You had some experience early in this when you were the state treasurer and
yes, very similar.
Took on the pension problem there. We've got, continuing pension concerns here in Illinois that you're probably well aware of. That was tough stuff. Mm-hmm. Talk about that. Talk about why you took it on, how you took it on, and what the obstacles were and the consequences for you.
So the first job I had in politics, I was an elected state treasurer. Is your treasurer elected?
Yes.
Okay.
Everybody's elected.
Everybody's elected. Same in Rhode Island. Everybody's elected. In Rhode Island, the motto is, if there's no conflict, there's no interest. Just give you a feel for the kind of politics. Rhode Island, I think, is maybe similar to Chicago or what I know of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I became state treasurer. It's an elected position. The primary job of the state treasurer is to manage the pension assets for all state employees, teachers, firefighters, state employees, police officers, social workers, et cetera. And when I took office, it was the least funded system in the country. Illinois was number 2 at the time. And I did a lot of, I was a baby, newbie politician, didn't understand the depths of how hard it would be as a Democratic politician if you didn't have the full support of public labor unions. And I did all the math, and it didn't seem right to me that politicians wanted to sweep the problem under the rug because it was hard politics. So I led a gigantic campaign in my state to shine a light on the problem. And I went to every union hall that would have me. They were all very crowded, very angry, and tough. And by the way, I would have been angry if I were them too. And I would say that. If I were you, I would be pissed off too. But don't be mad at me, is what I would say. I'm just here to help you fix the problem. Be mad at all the people who went before me who lied to you and told you this was affordable. And our system, by the way, didn't need a tweak. At the time I took office, we had just had a city go bankrupt because of the pension obligation. And when that happened, they cut people's pensions in half. I just couldn't have that on my conscience. 75-year-old firefighters being told they had to live on $20,000 a year. I couldn't do it. So I said, I'm going to fix it. Anyway, I led a big campaign. I took on a lot of water. I had to have state police security. Randy Weingarten didn't talk to me for years. Rich Trumka, rest his soul, had a tough relationship with him for years.
All union leaders.
Oh, sorry, all union leaders, teachers union leader, AFL union leader. But it passed in the legislature by a vote of 57-5 and 36-2 in the Senate. Because I couldn't find a politician who said to me, you're doing the wrong thing. They all said, I know it's the right thing to do, but I'm afraid of the politics. It passed. Today, it's very well funded. When I go home, there's still some people who are angry, but by and large, people are like, thank you. So many people are like, thank you. I was home over Easter, and my daughter and I were at a restaurant, and someone was like, hey, thanks for saving my pension. It's going well now. And I got reelected. Actually, I didn't. I ran for governor, and I got elected. So I guess my view is, and there's a lot of young people here, I just met one who wants to go into politics. I think you should run. But you got to ask yourself, what am I willing to lose over? What am I willing to lose my election over? And have the guts to do that, even if it means upsetting some of the strongest advocates in our party. Because I think people will constantly say to me, come right up to your face and say, I don't like you. I don't agree with you, but I trust you. I trust you. I believe that you believe in what you're saying. And so it was very tough, but I was reelected for governor by the widest margin in a generation, only woman to be elected governor, got a majority of the vote for the first time in 30 years. I think people want the straight scoop and they can handle it.
What you're describing, I think there is an appetite among voters for that, and there is this sense that politicians are tangling for power.
Yes.
And will do what they need to keep power, but it's not clear how the power relates to their lives, and that it's kind of an inside game that they're not a part of. But this is not new.
No, this is not.
I mean, I always
This is
note,
not.
John F. Kennedy wrote a book called Profiles in Courage.
Yeah.
You've probably read it.
Yeah.
Very slim volume. Because it's not that customary for politicians to risk their careers
Yeah, it's true.
to do things. So you're talking to these young people who want to run.
Yeah.
How do you steel yourself for that? Because what I find is that a lot of politicians, it's not just the power, it's the identity.
Totally.
This is their identity. So they want to do the right thing, but if doing the right thing means, and you see it right now on the Republican side in Washington, but if doing the right thing means I can't come back, that's...
Why do you want the job? You have to ask yourself, why do you want the job? If you want the job to do the job, do the job. I think you'll be rewarded and get reelected. If you don't, it's a badge of honor. Principled people need to do politics. When my father said, "You're all the same," that's what he meant. You just want to be in power. Or a lot of people think you just want to get you be in Congress and then go be a rich lobbyist. Like, there is a group of people that's kind of, my view, lucky. It's not that they're any smarter. They're in a certain echelon. And there's Democrats, there's Republicans. They have too much money, power, and access to influence. And there's some Democrats and some Republicans, and people know what's in, there's nothing in that for me. There's a Democrat in office, a Republican in office. Either way, I'm being left behind. And I think they're craving somebody who would rather work for them, the people, than just, get reelected. It is true, politics has always been like that. What is not true is the excessive amount of money in politics.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because that wasn't in your litany when you talked about things that needed to be fixed.
Got to be fixed. I said the primary system. Money in politics, it's broken, guys. It's utterly broken. We need full-on reform. And it's not going to happen overnight. If you're looking for a cause to devote yourself to over time, money in politics, we need reform. Income inequality in this country needs to be fundamentally disrupted. I think, like I say, the primary system, but on both sides of the party, certain interest groups or coalitions have too much power. And then the collapse of news. That is new. The collapse of news. I was the other day with actually the CEO of the New York Times, and she makes a very compelling argument. She charts it all out, that the rise in the partisanship and divisiveness in this country coincides perfectly with the decline and the demise of local newspapers.
Yeah. Well, there's a common thread, which is social media and the internet.
Correct. So that's all new. What's John F. Kennedy, I hear you, but the excessive money in politics, the excessive income inequality, and the collapse of local news and the rise of everything I said before, TikTok, et cetera, it isn't news. It gets in your head, it isn't news, and it's
It also edits the news you get.
Yeah, totally. It's
So
not the
you get the
facts.
news that will inflame you and keep
Yeah.
you online and so on. In your experience in Washington as the secretary, you were involved in negotiations on a number of pieces of legislation. You mentioned some of them.
Yeah.
Don't talk in the abstract. Talk specifically about what you saw in terms of the influence of particularly money, lobbyists.
Yeah. It's depressing. Lobbyists, I didn't see this. I was new to this. I was from Rhode Island. Lobbyists write the legislation. It was eye-opening for me. Call me naive. The relationship between the lobbyists and senator staff is so tight. Lobbyists, provide pieces of legislation that gets lightly marked up. So that's not good for democracy.
We saw a bill on internet safety for children. A bill was passed the other day, not a minor bill, but a significant bill on porn and all
Yep,
that
yep,
the other day,
revenge
but
porn, yeah.
there was a significant bill that passed the Senate at the end of the year, I think 96-3, bipartisan bill on governing kids and and social media. It got to the House and it never got a vote, and the industry, and particularly Meta and Zuckerberg, mounted a big campaign. Now Meta's putting an AI center in, I think, in the Speaker's district. Speaker never called it for a vote. This adds to the...
Yeah. That is depressing but not surprising. And it's also why I think money in politics, it's always been a problem, the mother's milk of politics, but it is rotting the politics
We had a ruling in the
have.
Supreme Court in 2010
Yeah.
that really sort of opened the
Citizens.
spigots
Yeah.
on that. Let me ask you about your own, I've known you for a while. We've had some discussions about challenges for women in politics.
Yeah.
You were the first woman, the governor of your state. Talk about your experiences as a female candidate and the barriers that you found, and what did you take away from that?
It's tough. If there are any young women who want to run, you should do it, but come see me and I'll tell you the mistakes
Tougher
to
for
avoid.
executive offices?
Yeah, much tougher for executive offices. Governor, when I became governor in 2014, I think there were only 6 of us. I was the 6th. At one time, it was just Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire and me, only 2 female Democratic governors in the whole country. It's a little better now. It's much, much harder if you want to be the executive, president, governor. And look, I think a lot of it is quite simple. People want a governor or a president who they like, who they trust, who you might say is like a father figure, someone told me they wanted. And it is exceedingly difficult for a woman to be both likable and strong. And a lot of it, people don't even realize it. Myself, if you're really honest with yourself, when you meet a woman, you will subconsciously, think about her differently than a guy doing the same things. It just makes it a lot harder. It's just I don't know, it's so ingrained in us. And I think it doesn't mean it won't happen, but it's harder. Like I think I raised twice as much money as my primary opponent. It's just harder. And I'm going to tell you an example. If you think I'm wrong, I'll just give you a fact. So my likability numbers were never high. My trust numbers were very high. And I always was reelected handily. So my pollsters were trying to figure out, well, why don't people like her? What's going on? And I kept
Weren't you curious about that?
No, I knew why. But because every woman who's ever run for office gets the same shit. There's just something about her. Everyone. Go ask any woman. And so we did this set of focus groups, not a poll, focus groups. You get some texture, you hear people talking. And I don't know, just something about her, don't like her, too serious, mean, So then I started showing them photos. Here's a photo, what do you think of that? Don't like her. Then another photo of me. I don't know, why does she always wear business suits? Then progressively my pollster, he's like, well, she's the governor. Don't you think it'd be strange if she wore jeans to work? Well, I guess so. Anyway, progressively more casual clothing. Maybe I could live, they put me in jeans. Yeah, maybe I could like her. Then the last picture was me in like khaki capris and a t-shirt with my family at a baseball game. And they're like, yeah, I think I like her. I could like her. So, like, it's very hard to be so non-threatening but want to be the chief executive. And so I think it's just tough. And by the way, I hate to say it's gotten worse, but social media, I'm sure you saw everything when Trump was running. Like, if you're a real man, you got to vote for Trump.
Well, that was very, very intentional. I mean,
Totally
and you can see it
intentional.
still coursing through.
Totally intentional.
Yeah. We're going to take questions. Is this where people should line up? One microphone? Okay, if you have questions, come to this microphone. Come to the microphone. And I'm going to, I want to prioritize students here, so let's line students up first. So my last question as we queue up is, what about you as a candidate? I think there's going to be...
Too short.
Have you ever thought of lifts?
I have.
No, I'm asking a serious question.
I don't know,
because
David.
you laid out
Yeah.
what you thought should happen.
Yeah.
Everybody but the ultra wealthy applauded for some of it.
You must be paying very well here at Chicago.
And Harris School students do very well. Many of them are already. But is it something that you are considering or would consider?
Yes. But let me say this. I don't know. The Democratic Party has a huge amount of work to do. Introspection. Like you said, where did we go wrong? What are our policies going to be? What is our platform going to be? What will our tactics be? How will we overcome this impression that we're elitist, we're out of touch, we don't have our sense on the culture? Like I already said about TikTok, there's so much to do. I don't know how many cycles it's going to take, right? There's a reason there were a dozen years between Carter and Clinton. And I don't know where we are in that cycle. So I care deeply about this country. I've dedicated 15 years to public service, and if I think there's a big way for me to serve again, including running, I'll do it. But I also, if I thought somebody else would be better or better able to win, I'd get behind that person in a minute, because this is like, the stakes are high, and this is going to be really hard. And for us to have a chance, it has to be just that right person at that right moment to make it happen.
Okay, question.
Hi there. My name's James. I'm a second year here at the Harris School. My question is going to be about trade. I was listening to what you talked about with your father and the steel, like the collapse of the steel industry. And obviously, like, cheap steel imported into the country kind of destroys that industry. But if you're using cheap steel as a manufacturer, it's great for you. And I think now about like EVs. Like, Chinese EVs are much, much cheaper than ones we make in the United States or in Europe, but we can't really get them because of regulatory barriers. And if we could, it would kind of destroy a lot of the auto industry. So trade to me seems like someone's always losing and someone's always winning with any decision. So in the cabinet, like, what discussion did you have about how you managed those trade-offs between who benefited and who lost out on these decisions?
Yeah, it's a great question. We agonized over every decision for the reason that you said. Steel is a great example. Even if China didn't, break the rules of the WTO, it's just more expensive here. That being said, as a national security, we should have some steel and aluminum produced in our country to be a strong country, and that might make things a little more expensive. Also, it's good not to put every steel worker out of work in this country. So it's a balance, and I think honestly it's different. Steel is critical, more commodity might not be. So that's why I think what Trump's doing is so totally destructive. You can't just throw a bomb into the system. You will hurt people and get it wrong. And so we try to finesse it, which I think is right. The point I was trying to make is, if one country just doesn't follow the rules, subsidizes capital, subsidizes inputs, subsidizes labor, we'll never be able to survive in the United States. And so if they would play by the rules, it's true, auto companies wouldn't get that rock bottom price of steel, but like the global market would be fairer and no one could get that cheap steel, right? So US auto companies could compete with a Korean auto company.
Thank you. And I should say, no, go ahead, James. Let's put a question mark at the end of your question and keep them brief so we can, I'd like to try and get through everybody on this line.
Let's do it.
Hi, my name is Yang, graduate student in sociology. Given the shift from your administration's small yard, high fence approach to industrial policy on strategic technology to Trump's broad tariff and more aggressive trade measures, to what extent do you believe the United States can successfully reindustrialize without undermining its soft power, especially when that industrialization is pursued through coercive or unpredictable trade policies that risk alienating allies and destabilizing global markets?
Yeah, thank you. I think what Trump's doing now most benefits China. It weakens America, weakens our place in the world, and isn't going to do a damn thing to bring manufacturing back. Because it's totally unpredictable, people don't want to invest here. I think the way you bring manufacturing back is like a lot of what we did with the CHIPS Act or the IRA. That is working. And then we want to encourage companies to invest here, incentives that are smart and targeted. And then what I said before, talent. There's like 2 million empty manufacturing jobs in America today. You can't find the talent. So we can and should have a renaissance in manufacturing. I don't think it'll ever be 30% of our GDP again. But tariffing willy-nilly is just going to create mass chaos and, if anything, cause people to invest in other countries, not here. And like you say, piss off our allies.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sonia. I'm a second year in the college, and I'm a Rhode Islander, so I'm very happy to be here.
Where are you from?
Bristol.
Nice.
And I guess I'm just wondering how your transition from governor to being in Biden's cabinet, how that transition went, and what parts of being governor helped prepare you for that role, and what maybe didn't help you prepare so well.
Yeah, thank you. Being in the cabinet felt like a mini vacation compared to being governor. Because, and I was a hard-working cabinet member, but when you're the governor, or like when you're in the hot seat every minute of every day for everything that goes on in your state, it's hard. You know, I'd walk out of my house, and you know Rhode Island. Mm-hmm. Like, you walk out of your house, there might be a gaggle of reporters. You walk out of your office, there's a gaggle of reporters. Somebody's upset about something at every moment, from the weather to traffic to infrastructure, and it's got to be the governor's problem. So that prepared me well. But what I enjoyed, actually, about being secretary is the ability to focus, you know, on a smaller set of topics. The thing that I really learned in Rhode Island that helped me be effective as governor was how to work with the legislative body. I think I passed the CHIPS Act, I did the broadband portion of the infrastructure bill, because I would go. I had, I don't know, 80 hours of drinks on Joe Manchin's boat to try to get some of his votes for things. I would go sit with Mitch McConnell. I would go to Mississippi with Roger Wicker. I remember once we went, and I'm sorry, we're running out of time, but we went to a meeting with a group of particularly hostile Republican senators who just basically yelled at us and told us we were idiots for about an hour about the CHIPS Act. And we came out, and my chief of staff was like, oh God, we're finished, that was horrible. And I said, I thought that was great. They gave us an hour, they told us what they didn't like, and welcomed us back. So, you know, when you're a frontline politician, you just get in there, you mix it up, you go to the events, go back and back and back, and I learned that in Rhode Island.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Chong Hao. I'm a current student of Harris. And I just read about the Chinese foreign minister had a speech on the BRIC meeting that the BRICS countries should jointly oppose all forms of protectionism, firmly safeguard the multilateral trading system based on rules and centered on World Trade Organizations, and safeguard its core values and basic principles. As you stated that America had long positioned itself as a leader of a multilateral trade system based on rule, but under the current administration, do you think China might be able to take that lead and form a closer partnership with other trading partners instead of America?
Yeah, I worry about that. I hope not, because China should not be in the WTO because they don't follow the rules. But what you say is something that keeps me awake at night. You know, you see now, you know, even India, who's a close ally and borders China, is trying to, you know, have some kind of relationship with China. When America doesn't show up, someone said this to me the other day. It used to be we could trust America, and China was a bully. Now we have two bullies. Bully in the White House and a bully in Beijing. But at least the bully in Beijing is reliable. That's very bad. So I do worry about it, but I hope that we can repair what's going on now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. 3 quick things. If you run, I'd love to work for you.
Higher.
That's not a question.
Yeah, seriously. Number 2, would you say your future for the Democratic Party is in line with the abundance agenda, sort of recently promoted by thinkers like Ezra Klein? And then thirdly, a bit selfishly, AI-related question. If you had the chance to be secretary for 4 more years, what would have been your next move on regulating AI?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
So I think the abundance agenda is good. It fits in line with what I was saying earlier. We have to be able to build housing and factories and manufacturing and roads and bridges much more quickly while protecting the environment. I will say, if you think as I think, Democrats are like out of touch culturally with people. I mean, does anyone talk like that? The abundance agenda?
No.
Maybe someone here. I don't know.
Okay, you guys are academics. So to me, like, the ideas are good, though I didn't see any answers in the book. I read the book. And it's like, come on. That, to me, epitomizes our problem.
Yeah.
AI. Listen, the biggest, if you say, like, hey, Gina, what are you most worried about? It's AI. It's the labor market disruption from AI. Mm-hmm. I am so worried about this. And this might be something I devote myself to. I know we only have 12 minutes, but I need you to think about this. When you talk to economists about free trade, and I went to Harvard, I studied economics with all the genius economists in the late 80s and 90s. And here in Chicago, free trade is good, comparative advantage, some people lose, some people win. I raised my hand in economics class in college, and I said, because I had a lived experience, how do you know the people that are going to be put out of work because of free trade will get new jobs? I asked that question. And I got, at that time, I knew enough to know it was a BS answer. A lot of hand waving, because that's the way economic theory works. Mm-hmm. It'll just work out. I hear that now when I ask the same economists about AI. I asked a top flight economist the other day. And he said, oh, don't worry about it, Secretary. It's true, nobody will be a truck driver anymore. But they'll have a different job. They'll run the computer to run the truck, or they'll fix the truck. Well, how do you know that 52-year-old guy who spent 30 years driving a truck is going to be fine and get a new job? The answer is you don't. And the number of people who could be put out of work and the pace for it to happen, including college graduates, is a thing that I'm super worried about. So if I were able to be still in office, I would be obsessed with that. We need AI, we want to lead the world, but we need a better answer than hand waving, oh, don't worry, they'll get new jobs.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you, David, for your time. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for coming over. So my question is again about tariffs, and it relates to what you said about redistributing wealth, increasing the wealth income tax for the top percentage and letting that be redistributed for the bottom people. And I was wondering what role do you think tariffs have in that? Because if they're stable, which today they're not, but assuming they implement a high tax of a high tariff for maybe 60% in China, for example, which seems to be the number, and that's the number they're going with. Do you think there is a role in the tariffs of bringing manufacturing jobs over and increasing the wage for those workers, and that way strengthening the middle class without having to super increase taxes for everyone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, if it's done thoughtfully, responsibly, and in a targeted way. A big percent of Germany's economy is the auto industry. They make nice cars. They also tariff everyone else's cars. So I think, like I said before, level playing field helps American workers. What we have now is chaos, not a level playing field.
Thanks, Eduardo.
Hi, I'm Kevin from Harris School, and I also got a problem or question for the Chinese EV cars. We know that you got the striking idea or opinion for the Chinese EV cars. You said that last year that if there were 3 million Chinese EV cars on the American road, and the Beijing can get the power to shut them down at the same time. So I want to ask that you cite this on purpose or intentionally, just as through the media, or the second reason is the concern for the censorship or the information leak, or it's just an excuse to surprise the development or the export for the Chinese EV cars?
No, not an excuse at all. In fact, if you think, listen, I think their cars should be tariffed because of what I said. China doesn't, BYD makes a great car, but they make it so cheaply because of illegal Chinese subsidies. So I think they should be tariffed. What I was saying is, a car it's like your iPhone on wheels. And if you had a million Chinese cars in the United States with Chinese software collecting data on where you go, where your kids go, conversations you have in your car, and all that goes back to Beijing, that's dangerous for America. So I think that's a legitimate national security threat, not a trade remedy.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Lexi. I'm a grad student at Harris and MBA at Booth School of Business. Before grad school, I worked on the Birmingham Biotechnology Hub proposal for Tech Hubs. Worked tirelessly on that, so thank you for your work. I'm curious, what would your advice be for regions trying to attract venture investment outside of the coasts, and how you thought about that in Rhode Island and then again as Secretary of Commerce?
It's really hard, which is why we did this tech hub. This is a policy I would do. You ask for something concrete, invest in communities that have been left behind, not useless trade adjustment assistance, but like tech hubs. Yeah, I mean, a lot of universities all over the country have some technology that they're great at. Venture capitalists won't go there unless you had some government money to first develop it. And so we did Birmingham, we did West Virginia. We specifically targeted communities that had been struggling. I think you just have to continue to do what you're doing. It's a snowball. And once you have a little more progress, and if you can develop something, I think you will attract private capital.
Real quick, I got one question I want to ask before. So why don't you guys go, but I need quick questions.
Sure. Ms. Raimondo, thank you for being here. My name is Scott Ersum, background in international and operations supply chain for Caterpillar. 30 to 50,000 of our jobs depend on exports. Could you comment, what do you see being the new normal for MNCs after this whole cloud passes over?
I wish I knew. I'm sorry to say that. I wish I knew. I think we're all going to have to get used to some new level of instability and lack of predictability. We'll have to take it as it goes to build that into your business plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, real quick.
Oh, thank you. In this discussion about trade and tariffs, what I haven't been hearing is how the H-1B visa is part of Mode 4 under GATS WTO. Prior to COVID, there was 30,000 foreign workers, mostly on H-1B OPT, downtown Chicago. 70% of Silicon Valley is foreign-born. My question to you is, do you think American citizens should be first in line for jobs in our own nation's labor market?
I don't. I think we need secure borders, and we haven't had them, and I think that was a mistake of the Biden administration. I think we're a country built on immigrants, and we need to continue to encourage that. And I think we need to work as hard as we can to make sure there's plentiful jobs for everybody to have them, and so that no American is left behind.
So just as we leave, we've got a room, there are obviously people who are not students, but there are many students here and around. This is a really great place to train. Tell folks who are watching what they're seeing today, why, not just why they should run for office, you've addressed that, but what is the future for people in public service generally in government?
You know, I was at a dinner the other night, and there were lots of hand-wringing, with just friends and family. Lots of hand-wringing, like, will there even be another election? You know, will we even have elections? And I said, yes, we will. And the person said, how can you be so sure? And I said, because we will make it so. And that's the future. You have to make it so. And if you, I just talked to you, if you want to go work in government, you should. You should, and you will make a difference. And if everybody opts out, we will not make it so. Engagement is the way to take our democracy back, to fix what ails this country and our politics. Engagement. They are counting on us to get tired and give up. And we cannot do that. So, you know, this is a beautiful, for those of you who can't see, this is a beautiful display of people before me. Looks like students, professors of all different schools here, community members. Every one of you can do something. And you better do it. Because if you do, we will save our democracy, and if you don't, we won't. And so I stand by it. There will be an election because we will make it so. And we need you to engage.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.